Hello, my name is Natalie Gregg, and I'm managing partner at the Law Office of Natalie Gregg. And I have a podcast today, and I have a special guest, Dr. Honey Sheff. Dr. Sheff is a licensed clinical psychologist and has been one since 1983. She's also a master credentialed collaborative law professional in the role of mental health neutral. Her entire practice is focused on families going through divorce and specifically helping parents get through this very difficult process. Our topic today is maximizing a child's success throughout a divorce. Hello and welcome today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I was very much looking forward to it. So
we have worked together on so many different levels in family law, both in collaborative law as well as litigation cases.
For a very long time.
Yes. I mean, even though we're both 20.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You made me sound very wise. I've chosen to interpret it that way rather than old.
Wisdom, 100%. So we have to navigate as professionals the questions of our clients. And the first thing they come to once they've decided to file for divorce is, oh my God, how am I going to tell my children this very difficult thing? I know you've given lectures on this. I know you meet with my clients sometimes prior to parents telling the kids together. I know sometimes you meet after one of the parents has suffered the fallout of somebody letting the cat out of the bag without the other parent. So
correct.
What would you say to clients who are sitting at home today thinking about what they're going to say, that really hard conversation they're going to have with their kiddos about the fact that their world is changing?
So this is one of the things I'm most grateful for when parents seek out help on how to tell their children about a pending divorce, because there can be so many missteps. And so if you're thinking about setting your child up for a healthy adjustment to the divorce experience, you want to start off right, or as right as you can. And you are correct, Natalie. This is an extremely difficult conversation. I tell parents that, quite frankly, this is the second most difficult conversation they would ever have with their children. And so when I meet with them, we really have two foci. One focus is structuring it, right? And what I mean by structuring it is the time, the place, the specific location within the place. So one of the things that oftentimes parents do not think about is the timing of telling their children. So for your children, if I was to say to you, Natalie, where were you on 9/11?
I know exactly where I was.
Instantly. You know immediately where you are and you can picture it. Well, and this is the hard part for parents. This is your child's personal 9/11 moment. And when I talk to parents, I can be pretty brutal because I want that first wave of emotion to come out with me, that experience to be with me before they have to tell their children. So the timing is crucial. We don't do it around a recurring event, a recurring anniversary event, like a birthday, like a holiday, like the beginning or ending of school. All of these things really stop the wound that this is creating. It stops it from healing completely. This is a wound. This is a trauma for your child. And so the hope is that it creates a scar that fades over time. But if every year around Valentine's Day, they look at you and say, yeah, that was when you told us about the divorce, it stops that wound from ever healing completely. And so we structure the timing really carefully. And I'm actually going to tell you something that I do tell parents,
Please.
Which is, if you have not told your child by Halloween, you probably need to wait until after January 1st, if you can. Now, if you can't, we play the hand we're dealt. We turn those lemons into lemonade. But that period of time is sacrosanct for children. It's holiday time. And every year, it will remind them. And when you talk to adults whose parents told them about divorce, you'll hear from those adults. Yep, I remember where I was. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what the weather was like, because it imprints, because it is traumatic. It doesn't have to be awful, and it doesn't have to be terrible for the children. It's terrible for the parents, but it imprints, and they retain it. They encode everything that's going on when they hear the D word.
And does this timing that you just described, does this change regarding the age of the children?
Actually, no, it doesn't. And I've had this workshop talk with couples with kids as young as 2 and 3 and as old as 43 and 33, because nobody knows how to have this kind of conversation with their children. So we structure it. We figure out where, typically the house, not the kids' bedrooms, typically the kitchen or the den. Ideally, we do it on a weekend in the morning, on a Saturday. Yes, if there's soccer or gymnastics or a tournament, we work around that. We don't do it during STAR testing. I've had several couples come in this week, last couple of weeks, and their kids are having STAR testing, so we have to work around their STAR testing. So it doesn't affect that. So typically it's in the kitchen. And I actually tell parents to bring food in, either bagels or croissants or cinnamon rolls, or if it's lunch, we do Subway or Potbelly, so that you're actually in a normalizing environment. You're not just sitting around looking at each other going, okay, this is the information and now we're done.
And then also, so they're sitting here eating a meal or a snack. Do you suggest that both of the parents have it scripted, or what do you advise clients to do?
So remember I said there were 2 foci.
Okay.
Or focuses. Focus. The first one is structuring it.
Sure.
That's all of that. And the second one is scripting it. And that is actually what I do with the couples in my office. We literally script it from opening, how do you get the children to where you want them to be, to post telling them what to do. And it's a really structured approach in which both parents, ideally, can't always have the ideal, but both parents participate. And the reason I ask for it on a weekend is you want to give your children time to adjust to the news, to process it before they have to go back to school on Monday morning. Now, again, in my experience, the ideal is not always doable. And I meet people where they are and with what they can do at that time. And then we go from the moment you say, and it's both parents, we don't talk in harmony. But they invite the children in to the kitchen, saying we've got some snacks, we've got some donuts. It's already giving the kids a heads up. Their physiological system is starting to be aware something must be up. And I always tell parents, I'm not rigid about a lot of this, but what I am rigid about is the opening.
Okay.
Because what I will say is you go in together and you say to your child, come on into the kitchen. We have some lunch and we have something important to talk to you about.
But Mom, what's happening? I don't understand. Well,
come on in.
Tell my sibling.
Come on in. Everybody kind of pile in, and we're just going to sit down, and we have something important to tell you. Now, the reason that I'm rigid about it, Natalie, is there's about a 10-second window where you will know almost immediately if your children, A, suspect, right, and are ready to hear. Because some children, it happens really rarely, but every once in a while, a child will say, you're getting divorced, aren't you?
Okay.
At which point, they have opened that door for you, and you walk right on through. And you say, yes, we are, and that's what we need to talk about. And then everybody comes in, never fails. I mean, it tells you two things. If your child says that to you, or your child is even asking you if you're thinking about divorce, they're telling you they're more ready than you expect. Because kids don't generally ask a question that they're not ready to hear the answer for. So some kids may suspect, but they're not going to open that door and give you that gift to walk on through.
So is this a speech or is this a dialogue? So do they get to ask a lot of interactive questions, or should there be a delivery and then almost like a press conference, a Q&A at the end?
I think the way I do it with parents, it feels that way. It's a press conference and then a Q&A at the end.
Okay.
But with kids, you never know, right?
Sure.
So I have already, when I've talked to you as a parent, I already know how you think your child is going, because that's part of what I do, how you think your child's going to react, what to do if you think your child is going to burst into tears or throw a tantrum or run out of the room. I want my couples that I work with to be 1,000% over-prepared. So I give them all the worst possible. Do you think your child will do this? Do you think your child will do that? And how do you respond if they do? I also find out how they're going to handle it.
The parents.
Right. This is the second most difficult conversation you will ever have with your child. And so I have parents that say, well, I can do this. I can be very stoic and I can just do this. And it's like, no. There are books out there that say this should be a casual conversation in which it's very short and you are very stoic. And I go, oh my God, no. What a cruel, horrible thing to ask a parent to do. Plus, it's not fair to their children, right? If you are crying, it's okay. It's giving your children permission for their feelings. If you are sad, well, that's real and it's genuine, and it's giving your children guidance on how to feel with this news. So we talk a lot about how they're going to react. Now, wailing, beating of chest, pulling of hair, no. That crosses the line, right. At that point. And then we script out, starting with whether is it a we have made a decision, right? That's something else that has to be addressed. Or if it's one parent driving it, does the other parent feel like, no, I'm not going to say we. I don't want this. I want you to take the responsibility for this. And so we work that through.
But even if that parent doesn't want to say it's a we, and they say that I don't want a divorce, isn't it important for them to stand united in front of the children with the same message?
If I had my druthers, I always prefer we, right? I do. Because I think right from the beginning, it sets that tone for the children that you are a united front. So yes, I do prefer the we. However, I've had couples where it's like King's X. I don't want this divorce, and I will not say that this is my decision. Almost always, I'm trying to think back because I've done this so many times. Almost always the other parent will take the responsibility. And we use the I pronoun. We talk about what does divorce mean, especially for littles. Mm-hmm. We have to say, what does divorce mean? And here's another really interesting point. Language is really important. So when you're talking about the marriage and you're talking about the divorce, you use husband-wife language. When you are talking about your parenting and about your relationships with the children or your partner's relationship with the children, you use mom and dad language. And I have couples look at me and go, okay, that's weird. Why? What I'm trying to do through the use of language is create a chasm between the adult husband-wife relationship and marriage and the ongoing parenting relationship that continues forever.
And why is that so important to explain the chasm between mom and dad love and parent-child love?
Because they're different, right? The love between a husband and wife is very different than the love between a mom and their child or a dad and their child. And so I'm trying to start to create a bridge between what is an adult relationship, an adult decision, and the ongoing parent-child relationship that will continue, and the co-parenting relationship that will continue.
And when you said that this is the 9/11 of everyone's childhood that goes through divorce, they know exactly where they were and how it happened when it was delivered to them. Why is it so important to give them reassurances that that love, that parent-child love, is never going to go away?
Because that's one of the, what I call must-tell messages. So you asked me about the press conference and the Q&A.
Sure.
So some kids just won't let you get very far before they start asking questions. And so one of the things I guide parents with is after we've done the "we are getting divorced," and by the way, use the divorce word. Do not say "we're going to be living apart" or "we're going to take some time," unless that's what you're doing and you're separating. If you are separating, you're not telling them you're getting divorced. I've done the same talk for parents who are simply separating. But if you are divorcing, you need to use the D word. They need to know exactly what that means. Because two things happen once you utter the D word. A, your children stop listening. So this whole preparation, it takes about 2 hours in my office. This whole preparation is for a talk that lasts about 7, max 10 minutes, right? 7 on the short side, 10 if they ask a lot of questions.
And,
right?
And what about the aftermath of the questions?
And so what we do, this is giving the whole preparation, is to put tools in their toolbox so that subsequent conversations, the one that comes 3 hours later because they don't remember what you said, or the ones they asked, 3 days later, or 3 years later. My goal in this, why it is setting children up for a healthier adjustment, is this is the first of many conversations you will have with your children. For years, I did a lot of work with kids, as you know. And what I would hear when I would say to them, well, why did your parents get divorced? I don't know. They weren't happy. Well, what did they tell you? They didn't. Well, when you asked about it, they wouldn't talk about it. And so a lot of my passion about the value of this comes from what I know children need. And they need more than one talk. You'll get a question when your daughter or son is about to get married. Go back and talk to me about you and dad and your divorce and why that happened. I mean, these are tools that you will use forever with your children.
Are there sometimes questions that parents are not equipped to answer? Like, where are we going to live? What's going to happen to our dog? Am I going to go to the same school? So what do you do as a parent or a client when you don't know the answer?
Okay, so can I back up for 1 second before I answer that
Sure.
one? So remember I said, back to the press conference, we've laid the groundwork, we're getting divorced, and then we go into what I call the must-tell messages. So there are approximately 7 what I call must-tell messages. And as you know, I've written an article, it's on my website, and you can find those messages in that article. Right? So you've gone through these must-tell messages, which, by the way, I'm not rigid about the order. Because typically I will give parents 3 to 4 different ways of saying exactly the same thing. Why? Because they're not processing. And I always tell parents, your children lose about 50 IQ points as soon as you say, we're getting divorced. We've made this tough decision. Now, the IQ points come back, I promise. They do come back. But it suddenly becomes all about them. And that's where you get these questions to leapfrog forward to the questions. You've highlighted some of the most common ones. And I oftentimes will hear from parents, Well, I don't want to tell my children about the divorce until I can answer all their questions or until I know everything. I know what the time sharing schedule is going to be. I know what's happening with the house. I know about the schools. And that's not necessary because children will handle, I don't know, but as soon as I do know, you will be the first person we tell. We just don't know. There are a lot of decisions that go into a divorce process. And right now, we don't know. We can tell you something we think. So about the house, for example, never promise a child that they are staying in that house unless you know they are staying in that house. The school. Well, we do know that for this, you are going to finish out the school year at this school. We're hoping that you can stay at this school, but we don't know yet. And as soon as we do, we will tell you. It's that tagline. It's the as soon as we know, we will tell you that settles kids' anxiety and uncertainty down. One of the must-tell messages, for example, is, okay, Johnny, there are some things that are going to change as a function of the divorce. But you know what? There are a lot of things that aren't going to change. First of all, our love for you is not going to change. I'm still going to be your mom. This is still going to be your dad. If you know you're going to stay in the house, you can say you're going to be staying in this house with mom or perhaps with dad. And you're going to have a new home with the other parent. That's the biggest change that you're going to experience. You're going to have two homes. But you're still going to go to the same school if you know these things. And even if you don't, there are things you know. They're still going to play soccer. They're still going to go to gymnastics, right? You find 3 or 4 things to take the big bomb of living in two homes and you soften it with all of these things that aren't going to change.
Do clients ever or parents ever ask you, Dr. Sheff, what do we say if they say, please don't get divorced? Like the parent trap type, begging and pleading, the bargaining that happens at the beginning of the message.
Great questions, Natalie, because that does happen. I had one couple, they had a 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old looked at her parents, stuck her fingers in her ears and went, no, you're not. I got up and walked away. So they were fully prepared about how to handle that. But one of the other must-tell messages, right, because you're hitting on them through the back way, which is great, is this is a final decision. This is a final decision. We are not going to change our mind. This is going to happen. It is an adult decision. It was a hard one for us to make. And so we wouldn't be telling you if we weren't absolutely sure. So as much as I hate to do this, children hold on to hope. I mean, that little sliver of hope. And with this particular must-tell message that it's a final decision, we're not going to reconcile, there is no chance of that. It's like slamming the door on that hope. And I hate to do it. It kills me, but they have to do it because kids will hold on to hope. They'll look for it everywhere. And so you just tell them, we understand this is hard for all of us. This is a really, really tough time.
So once we're in the press conference Q&A part, what is probably the most common question that children ask their parents that you have to field or coach on?
Okay, so the early questions, it's all about them.
Sure.
What's happening to the house? What school am I going to? Am I still going to church? Will I still be able to play soccer? Will I still see my friends? And these are all things that you've been able to ideally tell them that some of those that you know will continue. No matter where they live, they'll still be able to see their friends. And you find just 2 or 3. It's just sending the message that as much as there's this humongous change, there are a lot of things that aren't changing that will remain the same. One of the things, just as an aside, that I've learned in doing this work is that even for the parents, all the decisions that you have to make, all the parenting that you have to do is the same parenting, the same discussions, and the same decisions that you would have been making whether you're divorced or not. That was really an aha moment for me when I was thinking, wow, and I wrote an article about that too, that so much of the parenting doesn't change for the parents the same way it doesn't change for the kids. If you're doing it well, right? If you're doing it well. So where am I going? A lot of the things that impact them directly are questions. And then the big question is the why. Why are you ruining my life? Why are you getting divorced? Why? And that is one of the toughest questions for parents to answer in a really healthy, effective way.
So a lot of clients want to give a very concrete reason. So dad fell in love with another woman, or, mom stopped working. But sometimes there's not, and that is not appropriate, by the way, to say, obviously. But I have clients a lot of times, they say, well, I need to be honest with my children. Can you speak to what's a healthy honesty versus just confessional, maybe self-serving as a parent?
So your children are not your confidants. You have a therapist, you have a best friend, you have a mother, you have a father, you have a sister. Let them be your confidants. Children need to be allowed to be children through this process. And I will tell you, you're not at your best as a parent when you're getting divorced. You're just not. And yes, you're going to make mistakes. But the reality is your child is not your confidant. And your child does not need to know the nitty-gritty and the details of your divorce. The common recommendation, right? Even back all the way to Dear Abby, for God's sakes, those is always, if there has been infidelity, that's between the husband and wife, right? He or she cheated on the child, not on the spouse, not on the child. And the child doesn't need to know that. And I only have one caveat to that. If there's been infidelity, the question that I will ask the parents is there a reasonable probability that your child is going to hear this from someone else? If the whole neighborhood knows Johnny is with his friend, he's 12 years old, and his friend says, oh yeah, I hear your parents are getting divorced because your mom cheated on your dad. That is not how you want your child to hear that.
No.
So we will discuss, okay, what do you do if there's a reasonable probability? And I think it goes beyond the scope of this podcast about how do you talk to children if you think they're going to hear it from somebody. The person they need to hear it from is you. So there are ways to approach that with the children.
So in closing, if you said you have seven must-haves to the conversation, and in setting that up for success for the children so that they don't have this horrible 9/11 traumatic experience, form a scar that will never heal, and they will be in therapy for the rest of their lives. Can you tell the audience where they can go to find both your articles and materials to have bullet points to talk to their families?
Oh, of course. So it's on my website, which is drsheff.com. And there are resources on there. There are books on there. There's information about me on there. There's ways to contact me. So if you would like to schedule a consult to figure out and have this customized for your family, you're free to do that. Just reach out to my office and we will get that calendared for you. Because it is, this is such a difficult conversation with your children. And the one thing, it doesn't make it easier. This preparation does not make it easier. But what it does is it keeps you and helps you be prepared. And so my standard, when parents have done this, and they feed back to me how it went, my standard is, and keep my fingers crossed for, it went as well as could be expected. And I also have little tools that I use with parents depending on the ages of their children. And the messages are really the same regardless of the age. And the why is still the same. I have a very lengthy, beyond the scope of this podcast probably, answer to that why question that took me years to craft. And I don't know why it works, but it does. It seems to resonate with parents and it resonates with kids. And so this is the best way because you're starting a process and you are starting it in a way that gives your children the best opportunity for success and for adjustment. Because the reality is they will be okay and you will be okay. And that's one of the messages, that we will all be okay. Doesn't feel like it right now, but we will all be okay.
Well, I truly appreciate you going into so much detail. And I think that this is invaluable information, especially I've been doing this for 22 years. And if you set your kids up for success at the beginning, sitting down, being honest with them, having a family conversation, and being vulnerable to your children, but honest and having that difficult chat, I think will make sure that in the future they will not have trauma that they will reenact throughout their lives.
I agree.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a topic I'm pretty passionate about.